On this video is Sunday 10th of June 2012 here in Sydney, Australia. I hope you're enjoying your weekend. Been sitting looking at my charts, kind of agonizing a little bit about what to say. We've definitely had a fairly strong bounce this week. The question is, does that mean it's all over in terms of this last downward trend? And we've just put in a reversal week and we're kind of heading back up and we'll test new highs, or is this going to run out of steam in the next couple of days? We've certainly reached some kind of fairly important cyclical support levels on the weekly charts, on the risk-on charts, and I'll show you those. But we're still in downtrends on daily charts, which means we've still got to make pullback to end of trend. So trend trumps cycle, so even on a lower time frame, a trend move will be a stronger move than a cycle support or resistance on a higher time frame. So let me just roll through those charts. This is the weekly volume here. It's a little bit low in terms of we had rollover, and so this doesn't account for maybe about another certainly 1.5 million contracts of trades, about 10.1 million contracts traded. But it's one of these kind of reversal weeks where we have exhaustion selling and then exhaustion buying kind of going the other way, not unlike some of these patterns like here and here. This one here, exhaustion buying, exhaustion selling. So it tends to have a little bit of follow through. I suppose it could last till next week and then kind of reverse and go the other way, or it could be a little bit stronger than that. In terms of the 45, 135 and daily charts, you can see on the 135-minute chart we made quite a nice pattern in terms of bottoming. All this exhaustion selling on the left shoulder. We put in a bullish divergence here, come back and test the lows, kind of break the lows quite significantly, but we flush out all of those sellers, and now we've kind of started to break above a resistance level on the 135-minute chart. On the daily chart, it ended up being last week's activity putting in a bullish divergence pattern here, and that's what we're kind of bouncing from. And then on the 45-minute chart, we're kind of above resistance here. It was pretty parabolic, a little bit exponential on Friday's trade here. Potentially there's a bit of a double top kind of happening here. Let me show you that on the tick bar charts. This is the 40,500 tick bar chart. We did, with this move up to 23, hit some pretty big readings in terms of better momentum here, and we're in an uptrend though on the 40,500 tip bar chart, so we've got to put in pullback to end of trend. On the 4500 tip bar chart, you can see exhaustion. This is this kind of parabolic move right at the end of the day on Friday, kind of parabolic into those kind of highs with exhaustion buying. On the 13,500 tip bar chart, pullback to end of trend. This is where we had, this was all the good news up into Thursday. Well, supposedly it was rumor about what the Fed, the ECB were going to do, Bernanke's testimony and so on. So this is the disappointment from Bernanke's testimony, and then pullback to end of trend. Put in our first bearish divergence and a flush pattern up here, Rambo, right at the end of the day. So potentially, we could kind of sell off. We've had the news this weekend about the bailout for Spanish banks, 100 billion euros, I think it is, so with no conditions apparently. So we'll see how the market reacts to that. But it did look like pretty parabolic there. And this is, I suppose this is the most helpful in terms of timing of turnings. So this is the trend system. So the trend systems took profits nicely here the other day and reversed, went long. We've got a bearish divergence come in here, and we've got the trend oscillator kind of heading up. This usually gives a warning of 1 to 2 days before that trend oscillator kind of turns over, and then the trend oscillator is usually early by a day or so. So I could see us running for a couple of days. So Wednesday into Thursday is going to be really important, next week's trade. So we might continue to kind of test new highs. On those longer term charts, on the 40,500 tip bar chart, we've still got to make pullback to end of trend here to end this move off. And we've got all this kind of resistance that'll come in at this kind of previous high here. So we've got to punch through that. So let's see. I suppose this would just suggest we got a couple of days, certainly Monday and Tuesday, might be strong, kind of continuing up. And this is the trade, the 1500 tip bar chart trade during Friday's activity. And actually I wasn't trading Friday. I took Friday off. I'd had a good week, so I didn't need to trade it. I think it was a tricky day to trade because you can see here it was a complex correction kind of on the way up, popping stops the entire way, and you can see the better momentum. Each time it's just batting backwards and forwards between these cyclical kind of levels, highs and lows. We have a little pullback to end of trend sequence in here that fails. We kind of keep on going through, but all these cyclical highs and support and resistance levels kind of hold it through this channel as we go a little bit exponential right into the close, kind of up here. And then this is a tricky day to trade because it's just, it's got a particular direction and it's just popping stops. Everybody's trying to get short and figure out, when this thing is going to reverse, and it just keeps on moving a point or two through the highs, popping those stops, kind of resting a little bit, keeping going, and just all the way up. So it's kind of a complex correction, kind of exponential, kind of with a little bit of parabolic tail kind of in here, and you can see better momentum is just making bigger and bigger readings here as we're going up. So I think that's a very tricky day to trade. In terms of the setups, I think that the best one was kind of at the beginning of the day here, where we'd had exhaustion selling, first bullish divergence kind of comes in, we test down here, and you can see these three little blue professional bars kind of come in at the lows there. The lows of those blue professional bars hold at every single one, we kind of head off to the upside. That exhaustion buying right there is short covering. So it's got to be at the right place, so because we'd had this sell-off, the exhaustion buying that's happening there, or the extreme buying that's happening there, is kind of setting this move off, and so we don't see a similar reading until the pullback to end of trend, where we get the next reading like that in terms of pro signal exit, exhaustion buying, and so on. So that was what was kind of the best kind of setup for that move, but frankly I think that would have been a tricky day to trade. Other kind of charts, so the commitment of traders charts, this is the euro chart, again kind of other reasons why I don't think this bigger picture kind of downtrend is in. Here's the euro commitment of traders. I kind of reverse these, and you can see we've got kind of similar readings to the last kind of leg down, but it's not really making bullish divergence patterns right there. It's not similar to this pattern here or this pattern here. So it does, this is the divergence patterns, takes a couple of weeks to kind of signal, but those readings kind of down there are still pretty extreme, so don't see that necessarily. And then in terms of the SP contract, so look at the SP instead of the ES because it has better long-term kind of views on professionals, and we've had our crash signal warning kind of go off the crash. It's actually a 10% correction that was signaled with the activity over the last couple of weeks, and again kind of down here we've continued to go down in terms of the readings on commitment of traders. So they're not kind of reversing at the moment. I suppose compared to the previous lows, they're a little bit better than last time, but certainly this week we're kind of heading down. So not necessarily kind of bullish patterns kind of happening there. I have to wait and see though. But this is the weekly charts where we're seeing all these kind of support levels kind of come in. So on the euro we've had extreme selling on the downside and a pullback to end of trend sequence with blue professional bars kind of coming in. So typically how I'd read this would be we have to wait for the second cyclical turn after this end of trend reading. We could kind of bounce and kind of come back, and if you see divergence patterns on the second cyclical turn, that's kind of a potential reversal trade. But on the daily charts we're still in downtrend, so this potentially could fail. So there's the support level on the euro on the weekly chart kind of come in here. Crude, we've got support kind of coming in due at some point here. This is Aussie dollar. We've had extreme selling kind of down here and bounced from there. We broke through the support level a couple of weeks ago, but it's that kind of extreme selling that we've had, and that's why we're bouncing this week, because it's just been a strong move down, and we're just kind of finding a little bit of rest and kind of heading back up. Silver support level on the weekly charts kind of come in, but don't think the downtrend's over in silver. We've not seen exhaustion selling on the downside yet. And then gold, we're below support here, not seeing the exhaustion selling. And then here's copper, so again another kind of extreme selling here, blue professional bars kind of coming in at the low, and we've got that cyclical support kind of due at a previous low here. So potentially that's what's holding up the market at the moment. But you go to the daily charts, this is the daily chart of the euro, and we're through support here. We bounced off, support becomes resistance a couple of days ago here, and we're kind of on the Thursday kind of heading back down. We've had exhaustion selling, and we've not seen the bullish divergence pattern come in to stop this. So we're in a downtrend, and this has got to kind of keep going. Gold, kind of rolling over from a cyclical resistance here on the daily chart. Silver's coming up to a pullback in a downtrend level. We had that spike up and trying to get into 30s here. Blue professional up bars and then blue professional down bars. I would suggest that's the professionals kind of getting short on the way up and then following it down on the way down, kind of quickly getting into that move. They want to see kind of levels like this in terms of exhaustion selling before this move is over. So we've got that kind of coming up on the daily chart. So I think pullback to end of trend is kind of due on silver going down. And then this is copper. Copper, this is the exhaustion selling on the downside, kind of getting this move going. We've got to see a similar type of exhaustion selling on the downside to end this move. We're below support, so we're in a downtrend here. And then crude, same thing. We're below support here. This is kind of getting this move going. We had bullish divergence kind of come in, that's why we're bouncing. So potentially we could see pullback to end of trend on the crude chart there. Aussie dollar again kind of bouncing off that parity level, $1 versus the US dollar. Blue professional bars into that, got rejected. Support potentially coming, becomes resistance. We're kind of heading back down, but we had quite a lot of strength on Friday. You can see we kind of closed quite high. But so on these charts, I just think we're still on the daily time frame, still in a downtrend. And then we've got the kind of mirror images on the weekly charts, on dollar index. So dollar index, we got support kind of coming in, resistance, I beg your pardon, coming in on the weekly chart with exhaustion buying kind of up here. We got to almost 84s or something. Kind of that's why we've just temporarily kind of run out of steam. This is 30-year bond contract, same thing. We've got resistance coming in here, extreme kind of buying. I mean, the rates kind of went down to extreme levels during this week. Exhaustion buying kind of going on here, all these blue professional bars at the high. And that's why this thing is kind of stopping. And then this is the 10-year pullback to end of trend with that exhaustion buying here, cyclical resistance kind of coming in, and it's gone off on the 5-year here, pullback to end of trend, blue professional bars kind of coming in here. So that's what's kind of stopping the downtrend move in the equities market and the uptrend move in the kind of risk-off markets. But when you look at the daily charts, we're still in uptrends. Here's dollar index, we're above resistance here. We've still got to make kind of exhaustion buying. I know we've had kind of flush patterns, but want to see a proper kind of exhaustion buying signal before this thing's over. And then you can see here on the 30-year contract, exhaustion buying this week, but we've got to put in pullback to end of trend, and all these blue professional bars kind of going up here. So I think you get the picture. All of these things have got on the daily charts. We've still got kind of trend moves to make. But on the weekly charts we've kind of temporarily stopped just because we've reached exhaustion buying or selling signals with support and resistance kind of patterns coming in. So that's why it's not as clear to me as how far this thing will run. I still think a bigger picture will disappoint in terms of the news, and we'll head back down, and this is kind of the big one if you like. But it's a tricky one, just because of this. It's almost like an Elliott wave pattern, kind of wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'd start. Last time that we kind of came down to these, we had kind of bullish divergence patterns kind of coming in. We had fairly big readings here. That was a big kind of sell-off. We've not had that real extreme kind of selling on the downside. If we go to the weekly chart in terms of volume. Here, when we stopped these moves on the way down and we kind of reversed and went the other way, the extreme selling type levels that we had were all up towards 20 million contracts traded. Here, this last move kind of down here, this last one here, and that's the kind of selling volume that you need to flush out all the sellers. All the sellers have sold at that point, and therefore the market can start to reverse. What we had into here was, it was bad, but it wasn't huge in terms of volume, only about 12 million contracts on the downside. So that's why I still think we've got to see something like that on the downside, and then this next time we test these lows, the psychology will change. We're having a bounce at the moment to this kind of area, and then once we come back down through this again, people start to say, oh, that's bad news, like this did not hold. We're going through 1250 or whatever it is on the downside. So there we go. That's my thoughts for the weekend. Video's a little bit long, it's going to be out a little bit late, but if you get to check the site on the Sunday evening, and we'll see how the market reacts to the news out of Spain with the bailout there. I'm sure a nice little kind of sugar high will kind of keep us going for a couple of days. We'll just have to wait and see, how kind of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday kind of plays out, and I'll be looking at those trend kind of oscillator signals kind of coming into midweek. Good luck with your trading next week.